Hey everybody, this is Peter. Sorry for the delay. Of course, when I uh schedule a stream, I start getting messages, setting up some meetings and whatnot. Uh, how is everybody doing today? All right. Do do do. Oh, hold on a second. All right. Here we go. So, if you haven't already heard, comic legend Denny O'Neil has passed away. Great writer. He was also an editor. If you don't know his work, look him up. He's written some amazing books, and he will be missed. So I wanted to. Well, okay. So the title of this episode is "I Love Comics." I want to show you two things, and then I'll. Hey, Frank, you were in a Zoom meeting? Cool. So I haven't really been collecting comics per se. Last batch of years, I occasionally pick up something. I've gotten a lot of books. People send me books. Mostly what I've done is pledge to Kickstarters, and that's where I've been getting books. I've we've had in my small town where I'm living in Kentucky, we had a comic shop for a little bit, but that did I think it lasted a little over a year. So I picked up books when that was here, but otherwise there's nothing available in town. I'm not going to go out of town. I might as well order online. But regardless, I haven't been reading as much as I used to, and I'm trying now to get back into reading novels. But there is a Walmart in town, and Allegiance is a new company. Mitch Brettweiser, CEO, publisher, and founder, along with his wife, president, publisher, and founder, have put together this company, and they got 4 books. Is there an ad for all 4 books? Yes, there is. Red Rooster, Norse Saga, Futurists, and Bass Reeves. So I picked up Red Rooster and Norse Saga. This is Norse Saga. It's written by Blake Northcott. If you follow her work at all, if you don't know her, she's written a bunch of novels and kickstarted them. She's really popular, and this is the first book I picked up, and I was really excited about it. It's pretty good. It's it's a solid issue, although I could tell it's part of a, probably a 4-part story. And it's my understanding, in regards to Red Rooster, which was Indiegogo'd years ago, that this, I guess the first, 3 or 4 issues is what is going to be the graphic novel he offered up. That's being just split into individual issues, which, I can understand it. I think he should have made it clearer to those that pledged, because I heard after the fact that a lot of people were upset to see the book in Walmart before the Indiegogo was fulfilled, but he's still apparently working on it. So I believe they'll get the complete graphic novel before the individual issues come out, since I guess the plan is to do it bi-monthly in the store in Walmart. But I thought it was really awesome that a independent publisher would get distributed through Walmart, and I do wish them success in that fashion, and I hope they just get Red Rooster out to their supporters. And there you go. And I forgot. All right, I'll be back in 2 seconds. Do not. All right, sorry about that. So I was trying to look for pliers or something, which I'm pretty sure I have one. I just don't know where it is at the moment. This has never happened to me, where the tip of the brush, so the metal part popped off the rest of it, and I was thinking I can wedge it a little, but I just hope that it doesn't do that again. Really strange. Really strange. So yeah, fingers crossed. So I mentioned last episode that I was thinking I would do an episode earlier, like maybe in the middle of the afternoon, but really it's evening, and it's a little warm, it's a little humid. I'm thinking maybe I'll just go earlier. So this morning I was on a mission. I got together with a bunch of friends and we were just chatting. Some of them were working on art, but I was going through a lot of my mail and various bills and just paperwork. And mostly just to see what I need and can keep, and what was just garbage. And I filled up a freaking garbage bag, like a kitchen-sized garbage bag full of stuff I don't need. I was really proud of myself, but that's just like a step in the right direction. Trying to really get this studio organized, and it's going to take a lot more than that to go through all the rubble that's piled up. It's funny. I've looked at sort of mom and pop businesses throughout my life, and from the outside, it's really easy to say, well, if you did this or that, maybe your business would improve. And it's like, if you're working really hard and focused on, just the product or service of your business, it's really easy for everything else to pile up. So, live and learn. But yeah, I guess I wanted today's topic to be, I love comics. I mean, frankly, I wouldn't be working on a comic if I didn't love them. And this is only the beginning of what I hope to offer. I don't see myself doing a monthly book, like Retro is a monthly. But, if it's successful, once I get an issue or a couple issues out, I will rethink doing more than a quarterly or doing more than a bi-monthly book. Because, as anybody who makes comics knows, a lot of work goes into what we do and create. And I know as an anchor, even on my best days, inking a 22-page book, and I'm planning to do, regular issue will be 25 pages plus cover. So it's a little more than what I've been used to in the past. I definitely add on top of that, I'll be writing and beyond issue 1, I'll be penciling. And frankly, I have yet to pencil a full book. But I'm not too worried at this point. I've done short stuff. And I want to do a lot more short stories before I tackle issue 2 of this, which is the plan. I'll get the first issue out, then, promote it for a while while I get other projects done. And this way I can really plot out next batch of issues and get my skills up as far as penciling and, work on the other books in the universe and get the ball rolling on all that. Oh man. I was talking to somebody about the quality of, like, when I'm just an anchor on, when back in the day, working all in DC and even working on a slew of independent publisher books, I used to be a lot more fussy as far as, the quality of work that went into the inks on a page. Right now, it's like I don't have. I'm using Higgins, and I know what it is. Oh, okay, I'm a bit of an alchemist, and I'm using the wrong one. That's why it's coming out weird. I've got my own system. All right, so I have 2 bottles of ink. One is for quill, one is for brush. I was using the bottle of quill, which is coming out lighter, it's meant to. Ink has a tendency to blot up and dry on the quill pretty fast. So if the ink is thicker, that's not a good thing. So for the brush, I use the thicker, darker ink, which the way to do that, if you're doing things traditionally, is you pour your ink into I got these little small bottles. Pour your ink into that and leave the cap off a day, 2 days. And the water in it evaporates, and you'll have a thicker ink. It's just like you sort of play it by ear because you don't want it too thick. But even so, like I said, I'm using Higgins, and it's not my favorite ink, but it does the job, and I'm not going to be too fussy. I mean, it is my own book, and in the end, I want it to look incredible, but printing and paper have been much improved in the last 10, 20 years. And it's funny, I saw a bunch of original art pages from Mike Mignola. If you know who he is, Hellboy. He's done a lot of stuff, Marvel and DC. He actually started as anchor. So I came across, and this was years ago, but I came across some original artwork from Hellboy, and it's barely it was barely dark gray on the page, and that sort of was convinced me. It's like, okay, I might be being a little ridiculous, because a lot of pages I've worked on in the past, and occasionally when the mood strikes me, um, it's not necessarily dictated by project. If I have the time, I just become a little more fussy. Um, but yeah, I love doing inks on a page and fussing over it so that every black area and every line is like jet black, if possible. um, and that's us artists can be wacky like that. It's not necessary because, like I said, came across these pages from Mike Mignola, and barely dark gray. What? It looked like it was ink washed, like with a giant, like he got a giant brush and filled in the black areas with ink wash almost. It wasn't. It was just like, the ink or whatever. He wasn't being fussy with it. But if you look at, obviously, the comic, it's just big, bold, black areas. And, all he had to do was scanning the pages and just, mess in Photoshop or whatever until all the areas were, midnight black, or whatever the darkest black is. So I don't have to necessarily be that fussy. And it's also funny. I knew. Well, I didn't know him, but I saw him around a bunch of times back in the day when I was living in New York, and Jimmy and Joe, Jimmy, Palmiotti, my brother, used to have essentially, comic book gatherings at this bar openers. And, I'd go when I wasn't working. And, a lot of my friends were also in the same circles as like a lot of my brother's friends. And so I'd run into a lot of my friends there. But then, a lot of people I didn't know, and I met Mike Mignola way back then. And this was, he was working in comics, but he wasn't doing Hellboy yet. That was maybe later down the line. But, I remember one time I was there, and it was becoming too hot inside or just too crowded and noisy. And I wanted to take a bit of a break. And went outside, and he was just standing outside. So I said hello, and we talked for a little while. I don't know why I specifically remember that. We didn't, I don't think I knew of his work as much as I did later, but I knew who he was. I mean, it would have been a perfect opportunity to ask him 1,000 questions about, you know, what he does, but I think we just sort of like, hey, it's crazy in there. But, back in the day when Marvel and DC, their headquarters were both in New York, and I was, living in Brooklyn. I'd be in New York a lot. Used to stop by their offices a lot. And it's definitely tons of opportunity to run into a lot of the writers and artists and anchors and colorists and all that. You know, for the most part, it's like I'm just happy to see the creators. You know, I don't always walk up to creators and say hi and I love your work kind of thing. And maybe, I would be doing better business if I did. But, I'd say hello, hey, I am who I am and I'm making comics and just wants to say it's nice to meet you kind of stuff. But yeah, it's not like I run into people on the street per se, but I'd be up in the offices of Marvel in DC and be like, that guy looks familiar. I think I've seen his picture in a comic. And I asked like the receptionist or whoever was around, who was that? Len Wen, Marv Wolfman, uh, some artist or another, Walt Simonson. I'd be like, oh, that's awesome. You know, I was really a fan of Marvel comics growing up. Although I definitely picked up a lot of independence and heavy metal and just different stuff. One of my favorite things, before like Wizard Magazine was the thing, the Comics Journal was my source of real interviews. They did interviews written that you had to read that were like felt like 30 pages at least. It would take me a couple of days to go read through an interview, but it would be so in depth and so fascinating because they're great interviewers and writers were working at the Comics Journal. It's a fantastic magazine, and it's almost worth it to pick up back issues. Since it's not published anymore, as far as I know, and go and read the past interviews of creators and writers and what they went through to work on projects and their career and whatnot. But yeah, so what did I do today? Yeah, so other than getting together with fellow artists, creators, going through a huge stack of paperwork, throwing out so much useless garbage. That's something I plan to do. I mentioned before, trying to keep up daily habits. you know, I'm not really, I'm the kind of guy that's like, I'm not really happy unless I feel like I'm excelling at something. I could do something for a long time and, you know, push to get better and whatnot. But if at some point I'm not excelling at it, then I know I got to put more time into it to sharpen my skills, or I'm gonna, worst case scenario, I'm gonna lose interest. And if it's your career, you don't want to lose interest. So anyway, like, I'm trying to work on daily habits that will improve the business side of what I'm doing, because I know what to do business wise, but I've let a lot slide over the years, and really I'm not happy at this point with it. So, I want to do well enough where I don't, not worried about money every day. It's like, obviously things ebb and flow, and but I want to get my business up in a better position, so I get more money coming in, and I won't have to fret more, like, where I could just like focus on my own projects in the long run. We shall see. Things are, going well. This is, whatever it is, my my fifth day in a row of keeping this up. And that's a good thing. It's not easy to do videos or stream every day. It's, I mean, I'm not doing anything but turning the camera on, but then I'm trying to promote it, trying to increase my YouTube channel. So there is extra work involved. It's not just turning on the camera, but so it becomes an added chore. So I was thinking about, I want to do this better over time. But, right now I'm mostly focused on two things: getting work on my project done and doing a stream each day. So if it's not, if it's not groundbreaking every day, that's fine. It's more for me than my audience. It's like pretty much the way I see it. If I see a friend of mine whose work I follow, I'll check out and support their stream or their video they uploaded. And it doesn't have to be, them editing it for hours or them writing a script for what they're doing. It's, casual stuff is fine. So far my brush is holding up. I know I have a wrench around here somewhere. Make sure I lock it in. I never had one pop off. That's crazy. We chicken on the chat. I just started collecting again. Mostly just been getting books from creators like Jeff and the 100th Anthology. Yep. Yeah, and that's what it's become. I was, more a collector when I had a day job before, I started doing comics for a living. And yeah, definitely the first 10 years of me in the field, I was crazy. I was reading too much. Maybe I burnt myself out a little bit, but it's like I was reading hundreds of comics a month, keeping up with everybody that was, like, what book is this artist I love working on? What book is this artist I love working on? And that's mostly like, me in a small way, I mean, other people's opinion are what they are, but like, um, I'm not a published writer per se. Let me just put it that way. But I've written for years. I mean, you could read my writing on Twitter and Facebook. But as far as writing comics, I've collaborated. I've helped plot books. I've consulted. Sort of as a fellow writer. And maybe I'm forgetting something, but really retro is going to be my first real foray into writing. There's always all the books I made growing up and throughout the years for myself that I never showed anybody. That was my training, and I did do some webcomic stuff, but it was very short-lived, so I wouldn't even consider that heavy writing. So this would be the real first test. But yeah, I mean, what I love when a comic really clicks, like we just want to go to the comic store and pick up the next issue, and there were a ton of series like that. I could point to the X-Men at certain points, the Avengers, Spider-Man, Iron Man, Captain America. Picked up Thor at various points, but that's that. It's almost like a whole different language. Well, it is, but I didn't love Thor. I loved what he represented. I wish it was more like just regular English. That's kind of like how I feel about Wonder Woman. It's too much history, too much mythology for me to remember and follow. And I like when it's just a straight, hey, this is what's going on. This is how Wonder Woman is going to save the day or whatever. I could pick up a issue of Captain America or Daredevil or what have you, and it'll be the villain of the an issue. I love ongoing stories that cover more than one issue. Um, but more than likely, already have to be sort of into the flow of the book already for me to take on a whole sort of event saga. But yeah, I mean, my favorite example of when things were clicking right, it's like I picked up X-Men because I knew originally Dave Cockrum's work, and he did the Giant Size X-Men where they introduced the new team of X-Men. I actually picked up X-Men before that when it was canceled, but they were doing reprints within the series. It was the weirdest freaking thing. And it's like, yeah, it's a cool team, and that ball guy's in charge, and they got cool powers. But the art from most of it previous to Dave Cockrum um, wasn't all that fancy. Their costumes were kind of bland. There was nothing flashy about them, and I mean, didn't have to be flashy, but it was really old school comics. But when Dave Cockrum did that Giant Size X-Men, and then did regular issues after that, I really got into the book. You see the team hanging out on the streets during Christmas, uh, then in costume fighting this villain or that. Then one of the characters, whatever, cousin's brother, they go on a little adventure outside of New York. So it was like it's an ongoing story of their lives and the obstacles they faced, and but each issue, well, I don't know, was it early issues? Yeah, each issue like stood on its own, but there'd be definitely building up subplots. I like those little bits of like this or that character is dealing with an issue at the time, and um, showing them face it and work through it. Like I remember back in the day when Peter, aka Colossus, would be very unsure of himself. He was probably strength wise the strongest X-Men, but he wasn't that confident, and so it showed him really like back in the day when they had word balloons that were them thinking. I love that stuff. I don't know if that's necessary anymore. I mean, you could do sort of narration rectangles for what's happening in characters' minds. It doesn't have to be like the little cloud balloon. But just just the sheer joy of like well written, well drawn comics, and really start getting into these characters and their ongoing story. And you go pick up the next issue at the comic store and go, oh, it's here. And I know when John Byrne took over the art, the story just kept getting better and better and better. You know, there was a couple bumps in the road, and I wish they didn't kill Marvel Girl, because that set up a whole thing where they kept killing her off and bringing back. I don't know. That's that whole stupid thing. But I used to look forward to the new issue coming out, and because I used to go up to Marvel, and back in the day, um, there really wasn't any security, or nobody really had a problem with you going up there and talking to editors or just walking around on your lonesome. um and they used to be stacks and stacks. Like, if you go into the copy room, you'd find stacks of copies of pages from different books. And I remember getting, I don't know if I got it or my brother got it, but like we got like a whole issue of X-Men that was in black and white, that was pretty much corrected, and um, you could read it. And I was like, oh, holy cow, this is the next issue of X-Men. Um, John Byrne's work, artwork looks freaking amazing in black and white. Yeah. It's like those times when you realize, like, how much the coloring, even a good colorist, it covers up the artwork. It's like everything's in clear black and white. Coloring always changes the artwork. Sometimes for the better. I'm really picky, but yeah, during like the X-Men with the Hellfire Club, and that was most pivotal moment for Wolverine in the sewer. First time you saw him in the sewer, and he was getting more and more popular. It was like every issue was like gold, like that. Villain after villain after villain after villain, and just building on this bigger story that was like little subtle plots along the way. It was pretty magical. And I felt like that with many books. X-Men's an easy one. There was this writer artist, Paul Chadwick, independent guy, had a book, Concrete, and it's almost like a thing, but it was more like if Thing had his own comic. But the writing was more poetic, and it was more like the meaning of life for this character, and how he got around in life because of his strange, almost like deformity. And he was popular because of it, but didn't really want to be popular because of it. I forget exactly, but It was an amazing book and just gorgeous. And I'm more than likely picking up a book first because of the art. And it was definitely gorgeous art. But the writing was really well done as well. It's kind of like um, I've written a lot of novels, but I've read mostly horror, which to me still seems like kind of weird. I read a big chunk of sci-fi, which is more what I love. Um, but Stephen King really latched on to me. Really just fell in love with his work. Um, but like Stephen King isn't somebody I would call poetic. He's more regular. Like almost like his characters talk like just meeting somebody on a street. But there was another horror writer, Peter Straub, and I loved his work. I haven't read as much Peter Straub, but um, his work to me was always very poetic, especially compared to Stephen King. And the only reason you would compare the two is because they actually have written a couple of books together called The Talisman, which I freaking loved. Um, Talking about making that into a movie at one point. I'd still love to watch that. If they did it right, God knows for all the good movies that have come from Stephen King, novels, there are just as many, if not more, kind of failures of attempts. Boom, boom, boom. But yeah, I used to be really into the Avengers, and I didn't mind that the team kept changing. It's like I love certain characters on the team. Then Captain America or Iron Man would leave for a little while, and they introduce these other characters. It's like they put at one point was it Avengers? They put Spider-Man, Power Man, Ghost Rider, and Wolverine. I don't know. It's like a weird combination. And I was like, okay, none of these characters are really what I would consider Avengers, but okay. But I mean, it's like I don't know. They took liberties. It was like, to me, there's certain members of the Avengers that are definitely work, and there's certain members that definitely like. You probably put these characters in a different group. Like I know they had like the horror characters grouped together at some point or another, and that worked. Then they had the Defenders, and you kept the Defenders and the Avengers different, like a different kind of flavor, and that worked. It's almost like when the X-Men started getting 1,000 books, it would be the Uncanny X-Men, and then the Excalibur, and then X-Force, and all of a sudden it was all meaningless. There's just enough already. You got 18 billion characters all of a sudden. I don't care about any of them anymore. Yeah, it's funny. I watch a lot of movie reviewers on YouTube, talk about movie and the movie industry and whatnot. And um, they were talking about Marvel specifically, like the movie universe, um, and how what they might do is, like the guy in charge will um, continue with the whole Avengers thing and different character movies. And they're talking about the potential of the X-Men coming into the Marvel universe, and how what they might do is keep it separate. Like they'll have X-Men movies, but that will be separate from whatever is happening in the, kind of like Avengers universe. And I think that makes sense because once you mix the two universes together, it's not, it's two different flavors, which works sometimes, but not all the time. So we'll see. It's like I really liked Spider-Man, but I don't know if I'm gonna love what they're doing in the movie. Although I'm sure I'll enjoy it, but it's just my particular taste. But I love the comic. I love me some Spider-Man. And initially that's kind of what I'm trying to do with retro is have enough issues in the beginning to where it's not any sort of long-term epic tale. To where you can pick up an issue and go, oh, okay, that's what's going on. That's what it's about. I see. I see. Where you don't have to read up on some immense 80-part crossover. Even though, I'm going to build the universe, I want you to pick up a single issue and have a good gist of where you were at and what's going on. But by the time I get to writing and penciling the third issue, I may have an entire different set of mind. So who knows? Who knows? I wish, like, secretly I can get financed. Just give me $1 million. I'll work on the first 12 issues all at once instead of stringing it out for what it will take me to do while trying to make a living at the same time. That's why artists and writers, you know, go work for the big two. It's like, you're gonna get paid when you work for them. You may not get as much credit per se, but you can bank on getting that check. And isn't that what you want from a job? It's risky being an independent guy. It's a lot more work. Promotional, everything. But in the end, it's more satisfying. I've worked for the big two. I've had books published by other bigger independent publishers, and there was always a little something missing. I wasn't at any point fully satisfied. I wish I had more input on the creations. A lot of times, I mentioned coloring before. It's like, yeah, I would have picked a different colorist, or I would have worked with the colorist if I was more in charge of the final product. But when you're doing the penciling of a book, or the writing of a book, or the inking of a book, or whatever, you don't really control anything else. I gave my 2 cents to the editor because he always, different editors work different ways, but a lot of editors were curious what I thought. What do you think of the ongoing story? What do you think of the artwork? What do you think of the coloring? Yada yada yada. They always want to improve the book and make sure you're happy, which is good. That's what an editor should be. So let's see. So tomorrow, that's wrong pencil. Tomorrow, I'm gonna try to do my show earlier. Let's see. Oh, Abe, hey. Yeah, look at me. I got over an hour. I was wondering. Salazar said this before. Doing some drawing for fun, getting the juices flowing before work on a panel. That's what you need to do sometimes. Abe says, hey, all. Speedy and Wolfie would be awesome on screen. Speedy and Wolfie. Is that your creations? I'm trying to think. And Salazar's in. These are cool stories. Thanks, buddy. I'm going to try to go a little more. It's getting a little humid in my studio. And I just feel like stripping. Not for a living, but when it gets humid, it's like this summer I just melt. It's like I just want to run into a cold apartment or jump in the lake. Nothing else satisfies me. So luckily, the second I said that, my AC turned back on. So no stripping for me at the moment. Now, let's see, what else was I really into? Well, I remember, I spoke of Hellboy before. I remember when the first issue came out, and I was so excited, and all my friends were excited, and we were all excited together. um, because I think originally it was a it was published by Dark Horse, and Dark Horse was doing Dark Horse Presents, which was like Marvel Preview or whatever the heck it was called, where they had you know um, like three short stories and different writer artist teams working on different characters, and Hellboy was introduced in that. The Dark Horse Presents, I believe. So when the first issue came out, it was like awesome. He finally gets his own title, and the the artwork was just so perfect, spot on. You know, Mike Mignola really came into his style at that point, and the coloring was perfect for it. It was just flat coloring, but obviously Hellboy was bright, bright, bright red, and everything else was moody, and it was a horror title. So Mike spotted so much black on it, but it was just gorgeous, 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 gorgeous book. And I think it was Seed of Destruction was the first story, which was collected into a trade. That was like assisted by John Byrne as writer or something. Like Mike wasn't confident enough to be a writer in the beginning. Anyway, it read really well, and it was paced really well, and it was gorgeous to look at. And yeah, I don't think anybody was disappointed in it. It was just a perfect comic and series, and obviously it grew into many, 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 many trades and miniseries, and eventually you get different artists that come on to do the art. Uh, I always thought, I understand it was a business thing. Mike wanted to write, but he didn't want to draw every miniseries. But I wasn't so much into reading anything that he didn't draw. So that's when I drop a book. It's like, yes, I love the character, but um, without Mike's artwork, it just wasn't as strong. Stephen King story. Cool. Um, so there was a publisher back in the day, Serious Comics, like Serious the Star. Let's see if I remember the title. Shoot. I'm not gonna remember the title. What was it go? Oh, Wandering Star. Wandering Star. Um, Wandering Star was a black and white. Whatever it was, it might have been quarterly, if I'm right. Um, and written and drawn by a woman, uh, Terry Wood, Terry Wood something. Um, and it was sci-fi. It was, lots of characters. I don't remember much about the story. The artwork, it was, It wasn't slick. It was very independent. It was a lot of work from what I remember, but she probably inked it in black marker. Um, it was just very indie looking. I thought it was gorgeous, lots of fun, and I was really into it. So that was one book that I was into picking up. Happy to see it on the shelf when it came out. Back then it was like I, for a time I really didn't follow like exactly what was coming up. I just sort of like went to the comic store a lot, and when I would see one of the books I collected show up, it was like, oh, awesome. Now you can all information is instantaneous. Um, it's like, oh, I know exactly when to expect everything, you know, which kind of takes the fun out of it. Now is a horrible time with like, I was speaking on watching a bunch of YouTubers that talk about movies and stuff. Now is a sucky time to follow them because uh, I don't know, like 75% of what they say is not necessarily speculation, but nobody knows exactly when their movies are coming out at this point in time. Um, Everything is getting pushed around. People are double guessing things, and it's kind of, I almost don't want to watch and listen to them, but I'm so sucked into it at the moment. I watched like a range of different things. Um, since I don't have like mental energy to sit and read as often as I used to, so I latch on to certain programs. Most of what I watch is artists on YouTube. Occasionally I get into um, independent directors and doing mini movies or little spot stories and whatnot. Essentially creative. I like creative people. Um, for a while, I was into hardcore reno and house making. There's a bunch of that. There's a bunch of off the grid people in homes you could watch. But it's funny. I was sort of cleaning up the my YouTube a little bit. I've since I've been on, which is on YouTube, like watching stuff, which was back in 2007, I believe. Um, I didn't start making videos until much later, but um, I've acquired over 1,000 subscriptions to different people. So I was going through my subscriptions earlier today and just deleting like stuff that nobody's posting anymore, or I'm not really interested in that anymore. Because I sort of want to get it back down to only people I follow and am interested in. I've subscribed to a lot of random stuff. There's also like a group of artists that were actively posting videos on YouTube who aren't active anymore. So just trying to get rid of a lot of things I was subscribed to. And see if that helps my feed, my YouTube feed. And in a small way, I think I'm trying to improve my focus. So it's like, if you have a friend and all they're talking about is I'm going to buy a new car, and it's like I have no interest in what kind of car you're going to buy or whatever. That's great. I know people need to get around. Uh, but let me know when you get it. And then we'll hang out because I'm getting tired of you talking about getting a new car. I don't know. That's being rude, but so I realized I didn't eat dinner yet. It's way late. I don't know why I'm eating later and later. I guess part of it is because it's summer and I'm avoiding doing things midday. But yeah, I guess I should go soon. Um, if you're watching this for the first time, then welcome. Please like, subscribe if you haven't. Um, you could become a patron if you're interested in supporting me and my work. I'm trying to, grow my channel here and grow my Patreon. I'm going to be doing a video soon for my patrons. I'll probably be working on a different project than retro because I get a lot more than just this one thing going on. Uh, Mostly because, hey, I got to make a living too while I work on things. Um, and I put a couple links down in below the video in the description box or whatever it's called. I was on Jeff Lafferty's channel not too long ago, so my appearance there. And I was also on a show called It Came From the Radio, which is my friend Mark Torres, his new show. And that was fun because it was different. It was like um it was on Zoom, and I've never worked with Zoom before. So it was like being in a strange new place. Um and uh, I know at some point I want to do some Zoom stuff and play around with Zoom, and I'm not really interested in doing it right now unless somebody's offering. Um, but it's it's another new way for people to hang out, and it's pretty cool. Um, yeah, it's different enough where I don't exactly get it right away. And it's funny. I was talking to some friends earlier, talking about it, and I was like, I didn't want to touch any buttons because I didn't want to get drop myself off the call. Um, but it was a show that's sponsored by a library, and there was at least 5 of us on the call, and then somehow the audience was around. I don't know how that works yet. But that was really interesting. Anyway, the links are below in the description box. My Patreon link. There's also a PayPal link if you want to just throw me a tip. And yeah, I'm doing these daily live streams. Something I just started recently. This is day 5 in a row. This is episode 6. I did the first episode a while back. Well, a month before the second episode, something like that. But yeah, I plan to do these daily and just work on my comic retro and eventually get it done. So did a little more work. It's about getting a little more each day done. So till I get finished. And that'll be a great, great day. Hellboy was one of those books I couldn't get but wanted so bad. Yeah. It sold out quick when it came out. I'll tell you that. I was on top of it. But I get 6 people watching. This is amazing. I think it's the best I've done. Um, it's almost sad. I'm going to try to do this in the mornings. We'll see if we get a crowd then. But thank you all for watching. Yeah, give the video a like and share it. I could definitely use the help of people sharing it around the internet to get more eyes on what I'm trying to do here. So thank you, everybody. Take care. Have a great night. Bye.